How's everyone doing out there? We are continuing our discussion of evaluations. Right now we're looking at the PowerPoint for establishing your evaluative topic. Now, some of you might be questioning, what exactly am I going to write about? How do I even evaluate things? What is evaluation? And so we're going to try to answer some of those areas of concern today. First and foremost, what you need to do are consider your interests. At the most basic level, we all have particular interests that entertain or make us think. You need to reflect on or reference some of the topics that you go about on a daily basis. Think of the things that you know very well, that you can talk about regularly. The magazines you read, the shows you watch, the movies you enjoy, the activities you participate in. How would you evaluate each of these particular interests if someone were to ask you about them? So, for example, you might consider your favorite restaurant, who has the best burgers in town, the best pizza, the best shawarma. You probably have a subjective place, and you could try to explain why this particular restaurant is your favorite. Who might be your favorite team or the greatest athlete of all time? What would be your favorite genre of music, your favorite artist, or potentially your favorite television show? So let's say, for all intents and purposes, you decide to choose your favorite television show, like I've done here. You might ask yourself, how do I intend to evaluate this show? Am I going to compare it or rank it against other shows? Am I going to establish a critique about the show as a whole? Or am I going to observe the criteria behind the concept of quality television programming? So let's go through each of these and try to determine which might be the best way to evaluate our favorite show. So if we compare to other shows, say for instance we look at the three shows here, Stranger Things, Mr. Robot, and The Night Of. All shows that I would highly recommend if you have not gotten a chance to watch them. I would recommend taking some time out and just Netflixing the entire weekend away and binge watching each of those. So back to this. How would these shows stack up against other shows? Are these shows designated for particular audiences? And what is our culture's fascination with these types of shows? So remember, we have to first determine what are our criteria. Why are we saying these shows are the best for a specific audience? Why are we saying these shows are must-see? What is it about these shows that are attractive to us that we're trying to convey to our audience? So for example, if we decide to critique the shows, we would then ask similar questions. So say, for instance, I'm looking at the show Mr. Robot. I might ask, what makes this show must-see? What are some of the themes and concepts that surface? And what do the characters have to offer? So say, for instance, I decide to condense my idea. Instead of looking at a list of shows, I'm only going to look at one. And I'm going to say, listen, the following the reasons are why you should watch the show. One, it talks about modern sorts of discussion regarding government, regarding conspiracy, regarding the bourgeoisie. It also looks at different themes such as usurpation. It looks at capitalism. It looks at hacking. These are all things that are current in our conversation. And what do the characters have to offer? You know, a lot of the characters in Mr. Robot are very individualized. They are very unique. They are very intense, and they connect with each other very well, and they move the story seamlessly. You might look at concept behind quality television. So one way that we might do an evaluation, we're making a judgment about quality. So what exactly makes quality television? Do we enjoy nostalgia? What type of traits does the anti-hero possess? When a show becomes popular, does it lose its value? So we might look at these things and we say, you know, what makes a show good versus mediocre versus average versus bad? And it's very easy to get lost in subjectivity, but that's why when our criteria are more thorough, when they're more reinforced, when they have better examination and analysis, and they have better sources to back up what you're trying to say, you can make a stronger argument for why one show might be better than another. Overall, we go through this entire process and we decide, you know what, let's critique the show as a whole. This will allow us to not only look at what makes up quality television, but it will also allow us to sort of compare this show against other shows that could fall within the same sort of criteria bracket. So a show like The Night Of, if I were to argue why this is the best show of 2016, I would not only give the reasons of what I believe makes quality television, but I would contrast it to other shows that might fall in that criteria and show a ranking as to why The Night Of might even go beyond what those shows have to offer. So when you are introducing your particular topic, you want to introduce the topic to the reader. You would provide relevant background information regarding the show or the network or the list of shows up to this point, and build up any criteria you intend to inevitably speak about in your subsequent paragraph. So what do I mean by that? Introduction should always set the stage. When you are writing each particular part of an essay, a paper, an article, has a function. The introduction's function is to establish the tone, it's to establish your primary argument, and it's to establish the key points of discussion that you intend to build on in your subsequent sections. What I do not need to see is an excessive amount of detail that does not connect to the criteria, so like minutia from episodes, specifics that don't necessarily reinforce anything, but they're just kind of there as filler, or fill your introduction with an overabundance of outside praise or criticism. So for example, in this case, a student went and evaluated the AMC network. Here, he went to go on to talk why AMC became as powerful or as diverse as it did, and he introduced it as such. American Movie Classics was established in 1984 and aired essentially what its title proclaimed. However, 2 years after the turn of the millennia, the network changed its approach and simply went with AMC, a sleek, concise, bold new approach that would reflect its programming. From that point, it has evolved and developed the finest television to date. With its premier shows such as Breaking Bad, Mad Men, and The Walking Dead, capturing monster ratings, numerous accolades, and countless followers, the network continues to grow. Despite the disadvantage of being on cable, where the audience is relatively a fraction of the larger media markets, AMC has proven that it can hang with the big boys of network television while consistently embodying its tagline, something more. So that's an introduction that provides a clear evaluative criteria as to why AMC is the best network on television. However, in this next example, which I pulled from Wikipedia, it is a much more drawn-out introduction. It gives a lot of background information about the very first year that AMC was made available, and a lot of filler information that doesn't necessarily get to the point. 1,500 words really isn't a lot, so your goal is to try to get as much information that is crucial to your evaluation or analysis that you intend to support in your later sections. Lastly, consider your options, consider your interests. What are the things you like? What are the things that you're interested in? What are the things that you could give advice on objectively that someone might ask you about that you have a knowledge or a working knowledge of? Pick something that you know well enough to assess, or pick something that you would like to research. Observe how others make assessments in shows, movies, and magazines with topics similar to yours. So remember, there's evaluations for everything, for products, for shows. Look at the different shows that you like, whether it's The Voice, America's Got Talent, cooking shows. Each of them has a particular sort of criteria that they assess to indicate what makes some person's talent or dish or particular voice better than somebody else. Examine how they utilize their unique personal voice to not sound robotic or systematic, unless that is what you are going for. So obviously, some people have a bit more pizzazz when they write, but ultimately the goal for an evaluation is to see, can you clearly evaluate what it is you are setting out to assess? If it's not flashy, don't worry about it, but you want to make sure that whatever it is you're evaluating, you have clear criteria for your background information, and that you support that criteria in your body paragraphs or subsequent sections of your essay.